Hey there, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Lady Otaku Presents. I am your host for this day, Garnagel181, and welcome to the month of Halloween! Where ghosts and ghouls around every tomb is out there watching you. Of course, I know Halloween is until the end of the month, but who says we can't spend the whole month watching horror movies, drinking those pumpkin spice lattes, and dressing up in questionable costumes? But we are not going to be talking about costumes, candies, and questionable drink choices here. So this episode is going to be a little different from my others, mainly because I want to talk about culture of Japan before my review. So this is what I'm going to at least temporarily call the Lady Otaku Presents Culture Edition. Woo! Let's get started. Today's topic will be horror. As many of you may have guessed, different countries take different subjects in different directions. For example, we Americans often take the history of the Revolutionary War very seriously, while the French and British people most likely just skim over it. In regards to our topic, I will focus on Japan and America. No shocker there. They are very different when it comes to the horror genre. Not just with the stories. I mean, heck, we Americans stole a few films from Japan. Remember The Ring, The Grudge, When a Stranger Calls? Yeah, those are originally Japanese films, and honestly I think Japan did them better. Though, be honest, I can't watch The Ring at all, no matter what. That's a personal problem. Anywho, let's take a quick look at the differences. I'm gonna start with America, because as an American, I'm more familiar with it. So basically, American horror can be summed up with this.
I'm gonna scare the hell out of you.
Yeah, essentially, a lot of American horror is centered around a physical entity and jump scares. Lots and lots of jump scares. Actually, most horror is jump scares. It's kind of annoying. Of course, not all of them are that way. Some focus on a magical element or psychological elements. The film Oculus, no matter how annoyingly predictable it is a good example of American horror using physical elements with the mere supernatural elements with the curse, and psychological with the confusion of whether or not it's actually happening, or only in their heads. Like, this film is a good example of using all of our main elements in one story. However, lots of films and TV shows tend to focus on the jump scares, as I mentioned before. Something that activates the primal instinct in us called the fight or flight mode. It's usually a loud sound during a period of quiet that can be anything from a creature, or a face, or even a fake out, which is so annoying. With the focus of being more of a physical aspect, our creatures are often things like actual monsters, or serial killers, or sharks, or things that have been taken over by demons like dolls and little girls. This is actually quite different from our counterparts across the ocean. In Japan, they often view horror as a more psychological experience. Most of the time, their films are more atmospheric and historical. With lots of stories, they use classic folklore and ghosts and demons, as well as real historical events. A lot of Japanese horror also focus on religious aspects, such as possession by demons or evil spirits. Looking at the Ring, or Ringu as it's known in Japan, the main antagonist Sakako is an angry spirit that possesses a videotape. Oh, you know, one of those things some of you might be too young to know what it is, and uses it as a method of travel to the living plane. The classic movie Kawadan is another good example, as it is a collection of short stories that center around Japanese ghosts and mythologies. Japanese horror also tends to focus a lot more on the atmosphere of the story, unlike a lot of American horror films and TV shows. This often leads to slow burns with large payoffs. The Eddition, which came out in 1999, is one that slowly builds up to the scares, at first seeming like a harmless film until the viewers are deep into the story. The sounds are another key to this method, and I don't mean something like a jump scare, I mean something more like this. Yeah, try getting that one out of your head. So what does this all have to do with anime? I mean, this is a channel that focuses on anime after all. Well, because of the physical aspects of horror in America, most Japanese horror anime may come off as, well, weird. Even though Pet Shop of Horrors is only 4 episodes long, it's still a good example of how Japan does horror, but not a lot of people have seen that. There's also cases like Ghost Stories, where the English dub was, well...
Such brave, strong, handsome men. Have you accepted Jesus as your personal savior?
Principals always look like lesbians. Mom? No, it can't be.
I'm too young to die. The only person I've had sex with is my babysitter.
Well, because they ad-libbed most of it, it turned out kind of bad, but in a good way. And by bad, I mean it changed the tone of the series, but in a good way because it's fucking hilarious. Of course, by changing the tone, this altered how the show was seen to us American audience members. There are titles in the United States that indeed did get a following. Future Diary gained a bit of a cult following in the US, while in Japan it got more of a lukewarm reception. Many know the show for its perfect depiction of a yandere, after all. There's also shows like Tokyo Ghoul, which have been popular as of late. There are also titles like Hellgirl, Blood Plus, and of course Death Note, which all have small followings in the United States. Well, Death Note has a bigger one. I mean, it got a live-action remake on Netflix after all. But I digress. What does this all mean? It means that horror is a fun genre that, even though there are clear cultural differences, it still can be enjoyed by anyone. And that makes it all the more interesting. So viewers, what is your favorite horror show? Do you prefer the style like we have here in America, or do you prefer the Japanese way of doing it? I would love to know what y'all think. Personally, it depends on my mood. If I really want something deep and atmospheric, I lean more towards the Japanese style, where if I want something more closer to home, I tend to focus on American. Now, if now, if you excuse me, I have to review to finish. Okay, what was that, Sylvia? That was the me, Garnigel-chan. Well, shit.